Well, now let's turn to Bob Davidson for his workshop tips and tools. Bob, welcome.
So welcome to Workshop Tips and Tricks for tonight. Again, my background is in theatrical and exhibits fields as scenic lighting and graphic designer and a bunch of other stuff. And I do love playing with trains. Tonight, we're going to continue, well, probably a month and a half ago, 2 months ago, we talked about lighting. So tonight will be lighting 102, our second look at some things that you can do to augment your layouts. And specifically, we're going to look at levels, diffusion, gobos, and color. But first things first, and the nice thing about using lighting to augment what we do as modelers is that it's non-destructive. You can always change things around. So what you want to do is kind of take a look at, take an inventory of what you're working with and what variables are there. There are many different fixtures you can use to light a layout. LED strips, I know a lot of people are using. A lot of times in open rooms, there's fluorescent fixtures, either exposed or what we call troffer fixtures that sit up in a suspended ceiling. Or you can use track lighting, which is what I happen to use on my layout because I'm down the unfinished basement. And then, as we discussed last time, there's a lot of different lamps. So you need to be looking at lumen output, which is a measure of the actual brightness of the lamp, not its wattage. You want to look at beam spread, whether you're using a spotlight or a medium spot, medium flood, wide flood. And then, of course, you want to look at color temperature that was covered in the first lighting session. And then also controls. So you're just going to be switching the lighting, or many track lights have single or two circuit dimming that you can use. So we'll look at some of these things and how you can play around with some stuff and some tricks too. So first we'll look at levels, and it's tough to get pictures that really reflect what things look like because most phones try to balance out the lighting, but I think I found a pretty good setting on my phone to adjust for that. So here's a photo of, I just put together a little diorama on my layout. So this is a 3000K color temperature. So that's a cool white lamp, and that's at 100% brightness. And here's a 2200K lamp. So this is a warm white or soft white lamp. So you can see here the difference in how these look. This is more gray. This might be more of a moonlight kind of look. Here's more of a daylight kind of look. But relatively light, and look at the spill that's off in the back. You know, it's really lighting up the background and areas behind. Well, now let's look at that same 3000 lamp at 50%. So I turn the dimmer down, and now you can see, look at some of the detail now that comes out. You know, here's the full brightness. Here's at 50%. So this really does now starting to look like moonlight. Here's that same look in daylight. So by playing with levels, you can really affect what details will be shown on your models and in the scenery that you have around your layout. One thing to keep in mind is, you know, most light that we see out in nature is not coming through unfiltered. It's either being filtered through clouds or through trees, or it's reflecting off of surfaces. So what you want to try to do is vary intensities and things like that when you are lighting your layout. So we can use diffusion to do that, softening the scenes, and there's a lot of ways to diffuse light, regardless of the type of lighting that you're using. One way, of course, is to use commercially made diffusion products, diffusion for what we call frost gels, and we'll get into gels a little bit later, silks and things like that. These are used to reduce the harshness of the light that's coming out of a fixture. They're rather expensive, so as is our standard here at NewTracks, we try to find things that don't cost us much money. What I use a lot of is a thing called microfoam, which you'll find at packing supplies. You've probably gotten something in the mail from not Amazon, but a lot of art stuff and things like that come wrapped in microfoam. And you can find it at office supply places, like I said, UPS and stuff. This stuff is great for softening, for diffusing light. It's really useful if you do have fluorescent fixtures. You can wrap the lamps in it. If you have troffers, you can lay a sheet of it inside the bezel, and it really will soften the light. Another interesting thing to use is aluminum screen wire. Aluminum screen wire will also diffuse the light. And here's a couple examples. So here we're back at that cool white lamp at 100%. And now here's the same one with microfoam. Now it doesn't really change the intensity, but look at how much more detail now we can get on the roof and on those skylights. So you really start seeing more of the lines and things like that. It's just a much softer light that's coming down. Here again is that full thing, and here you can see this is with screen wire. So with the screen wire, we actually reduce some of the intensity. And you can see how, just again, how much more realistic, how much more detail you get. It's so much softer. So that's a couple of tricks. And like I say, that can be used on virtually any kind of, if you're using the LED tape strips, just tape a piece of microfoam or screen wire in front of it, and it'll just really help break up the light that's coming onto your models. Gobos, this really applies if you're using any track lighting. These are the fixtures that I use on my layout. They're $10 track fixtures that I got at Lowe's. What's important that you find is a fixture that has a removable end piece on it, that little snoot at the end. And you'll see why in a second. And then you take a trip to the dollar store and buy some baking pans, some little pie tins. These are 3 for $1, or 3 for $1.25 now. And you take one of them, lay your light fixture in there, and what I did is trace around it, and then I cut out little discs about a ½ an inch bigger than the size of the fixture. So once I have these discs, this is kind of the raw material that I need. You see, it's just with an X-Acto. You could do it with aluminum foil, but aluminum foil is a little fragile. You could really rip it just with your fingers. So these little pie tins are great. Or if you like buying those little dollar pies at Walmart, save the tins that they come in. So then what I do is you can cut different shapes into it. So you can see here on the left is about a 1-inch circle. And then I cut, this is just for demonstration, I cut a rectangle. And then this last one is interesting. I took it and I just used a 16-penny nail and punched a lot of holes in it. And then you wrap it around that baffle, around the end baffle, okay? So here they are, and then I also did a little 1/2-inch hole in this one. So what do? So here again, here's our original light, okay? And here's the same thing with the large hole. So you see it's much more focused. Look at the foreground and the background. I'm able to concentrate the light now. It did reduce some of the intensity, but it's also focusing the light. So that's the large hole gobo. And here's the small hole gobo. So now I'm really getting down to where I can control. And where this comes into play is we don't have dimmers on every fixture. So by using these gobos, you can adjust the intensity as well as the focus of every track fixture if you're using track lights. Here's the rectangular hole, which allowed me to light up the whole roof, but again, still not get any light into the background. And then finally, the pinholes give a real diffuse light. And what you can do then, I just showed one example here. Now I combine the pinholes with a warm white lamp, and you get a little more variation. You get a little variation in the light that's shining on that model roof there. So here's just again, just kind of a composite of some of the changes. Same fixture, same lamp, same position, so same focus, but by using the gobos, I'm able to get all these different looks. So it's a neat thing to play around with. Finally, you can color light with theatrical lighting fixtures or gels. And I always like telling the story of why they're called gels. They're called gels because originally they were made from gelatin. The first lighting filter company was a company called Brigham out of New Hampshire. And Mrs. Brigham had trays out in the barn, and she literally would float gelatin in the trays in different colors using different dyes. And that's how they made gel. So if you got it wet, it would melt. Now most gels are made by Rosco, and here's their website, us.rosco.com. They make them for the film industry, Cinegel, there's Rosco Lux, there's Rosco Lar, there's a lot of different things. Frankly, their website's kind of boring and technical, so I didn't do it as a feature website. But if you are interested in learning more, go to us.rosco.com. We'll look at the Rosco Lux. Tons of different colors in there. And these are little gel books. So if you have a theatrical supply house near you, stop in and see if they'll give you a gel book. Most of the time they will. Tell them what you're doing with it. And you may say, well, these things are tiny. They're only like 1.25 inches by 2.5 inches. But I'll show you how we use them. A lot of different colors, but you can see each color has a data sheet with it. And here's daffodil. Some of the names are great. So this is color 310. It shows you the spectrograph of that color. So it shows what color will be transmitted through it. And it also tells you what its transmission factor is. So this will transmit 82% of the light that you put into it. So you're going to lose 18% of your intensity of the light. So again, another way to basically create a dimmer without having a dimmer. Well, how do I use it? Well, here's that same gobo before with a 1/2 inch hole in it. I just used the scissors. I snipped off a piece of gel and I taped it using a little drafting dot inside the gobo. And now, voila. You can now add color into your scenes to highlight. Again, this is kind of looking like a real bright moonlit night. And if this were combined with other fixtures and other lamps, you know, we would tone down the blue in the front, but look how nice it looks on the roof there. So really some very interesting ways just to play around and, you know, have fun and experiment with different fixture types, lamp types, play with intensity, play with direction. We really didn't get into direction, whether you front light, top light, back light things, use focus and pattern, use diffused and non-diffused light, and then finally play around with some color. So that's kind of the lighting part of this. If there's any questions I can answer before I move on, well, I will answer them. If not, we'll move on to this week's tool of the week. This is a good one. I found these at the local beauty supply store. I don't know why I was there, but I was. It's a 4-way sandy stick. Beauty Secrets. This is a single foam, one of those foam emery boards, but it has coarse, medium, fine, and extra fine all on one board. And guess what? $1.09 a piece. Sally Beauty is all over the country. Plus, you can buy them online. And for $1.09 a piece to get the 4 different coarseness, they're double-sided, 2 on one side, 2 on the other. It's just a great find. So I don't know, you know, again, I know we love supporting the model shops, but rather than paying $4 for one, it's $1.09. And again, it's just really handy to have all 4 grits on one little stick. So suggest you look at that. Tonight's neat website. It's been mentioned a few times, but I thought we'd actually show, Dick Blick is an online art store. They do have brick and mortar facilities as well, but you can buy just about everything. They are just a phenomenal resource for paints, surfaces, boards and things like that, brushes. They have airbrush materials, all kinds of stuff. You know, we talked papers and boards. We were talking about Gator foam and other foams a couple weeks ago, papers, all kinds of stuff. So I suggest you look at dickblick.com. It's kind of a funny name to say anyway. So that's this week's neat website. Next week is the theme is Stuck on You. We're going to look at specialty tapes and adhesives that we use in the exhibit field that I have been using quite a bit in my modeling. So that'll be next week's episode. And with that, I will stop the share. And if there's any questions, I'd love to answer them for you.
Hey, Bob, this is Tom Farrell.
Yeah, Tom.
Several weeks ago, I was asked where I bought balsa foam. It was Dick Blick. So whoever asked, that's where you can get balsa foam.
Yeah, that's why you remember, if you remember a couple weeks ago, I was talking about sign foam. You can get sign foam from Dick Blick. It's just they have it, and they're not ridiculously priced, so they are quite a good source for materials. And with that, back to you, Jim.